नमस्ते एवरीवन, बोलिए सत्य सनातन वैदिक धर्म की जय। आई एम सॉरी आज हम फिर लेट हो गए, बट कोई बात नहीं, हम अपना कार्य पूरा करेंगे आज। तो अब हम वेदांता लिटरेचर पे को कंसंट्रेट करेंगे। It is difficult to ascertain the time when the Brahma Sutras were written, but since they contain a refutation of almost all the other Indian systems, even the Shunyavada Buddhism, of course, according to Shankara interpretation, they cannot have been written very earlier. I think it may not be far from the truth in supposing that they were written sometime in 2nd century BC. About the period 780 AD, Gaudapada revived the monastic teaching of the Upanishads by his commentary on the Mandukya Upanishad in the verse Mandukya Karika, in verse called Mandukya Karika. His disciple Govinda was the teacher of Shankara, 788 to 820 AD. Shankara's commentary on the Brahma Sutras is the root from which sprang forth the host of commentaries and studies on Vedantism of great originality, vigor, and philosophical insight. Thus, Anandagiri, a disciple of Shankara, wrote a commentary called Nyaya Nirnaya, and Govindananda wrote another commentary named Ratna Prabha. अब आप ये क्रोनोलॉजी समझें। फर्स्ट दे आर सेइंग कि क्योंकि इन दी सूत्रास दे आर एक्चुअली जो ब्रह्म सूत्रास हैं ये ऑलमोस्ट एवरी इंडियन सिस्टम में रिफ्यूटेशन है उसमें। ऐसा नहीं है कि ओनली फ्यू सिस्टम्स आर बीइंग रिफ्यूटेड। तो दैट मीन्स पहले तो वो सूत्र बने होंगे, फिर उसको अंडरस्टैंड किया होगा, एंड आफ्टर अंडरस्टैंडिंग यू विल ओनली रिफ्यूट दैट। तो उस केस में इट हैज बिकम द लेटेस्ट। वेदांता का मतलब यही होता है कि वेदोस का एंड, आफ्टर द वेदास, राइट। तो उस केस में आप क्रोनोलॉजी समझे। 780 एडी गौड़पादा आते हैं, फिर उन्होंने आगे ट्रांसफर किया मांडुक्य उपनिषद को। देन उसके बाद उनके जो डिसाइपल थे वो गोविंदा थे, वो जो शंकर के टीचर थे। शंकरा, जब शंकरा स्कूल ऑफ हमने वेदांता अभी पढ़ रहे हैं, राइट। देन शंकरा के बाद आते हैं आनंदगिरी, एंड जो शंकर के डिसाइपल थे हु रोट न्याय निर्णय, एंड गोविंदानंदा, जो गोविंदानंदा भी उन्हीं के डिसाइपल रहे होंगे, wrote another commentary named Ratna Prabha. Vachaspati Mishra, who flourished about 841 AD, wrote another commentary on it called the Bhamati. ये यूजीसी नेट में ये क्वेश्चंस आ जाते हैं वेयर वाचस्पति मिश्रा ने क्या कमेंट्री लिखी, भामती। आनंदगिरी, डिसाइपल ऑफ शंकरा, उन्होंने न्याय निर्णय लिखा, एंड गोविंदानंदा ने लिखा रत्न प्रभा। अमालनंदा जो 1847 से 1860 एडी के बीच रहे होंगे, रोट कल्पतरु, उन्होंने कल्पतरु लिखा अमालनंदा ने। एंड अप्यय दीक्षिता, सन ऑफ रंगराजा द्विरेंद्र of Kanchi, wrote Kalpataru Parimala of Kalpatru. Another disciple of Shankara, Padmapada. Shankara के एक और डिसाइपल थे जो पद्मापदा थे, also called Sanananda, wrote a commentary on it known as Panchapadipika. From the manner in which the book is begun, one would expect that it was to be running commentary on the whole of Shankara's Bhashya, but it ends abruptly at the end of 4th Sutra. Madhava, in 1315, his Shankara Vijaya, recites an interesting story about it. He says that Sureshwara received Shankara's permission to write Vartika on the Bhashya, but other pupils objected to Shankara that since Sureshwara was formerly a great Mimamsis, Mandana Mishra was called Sureshwara after his conversion to Vedantism, he was not competent to write the good Vartika on the Bhashya. Sureshwara, disappointed, wrote a treatise called Nashkarmya Siddhi. Padmapada wrote a tika, but this was burnt in his uncle's house. Shankara, who had once seen it, recited it from memory, and Padmapada wrote it down. Prakashatman, 1200, wrote a commentary on Padmapada's Panchapadipika, known as Panchapadipika Vivarna. Akhandananda wrote his Tattva Deepana, and famous Narsim Sharma Muni 1500 में जो रहे थे wrote his Vivaran Bhav Prakashika on it. Amalananda and Vidyasagara also wrote commentaries on Panchadipika named Panchadipika Darpana and Panchadipika Tika respectively. But Panchapadika Vivarna had by far the greatest reputation. Vidyaranya, who is generally identified by some with Madhav 1350, wrote his famous work Vivaran Pramya Samgraha, elaborated the ideas of Panchapadika Vivarna. Vidyaranya wrote also another excellent work named Jivan Mukti Viveka on the Vedanta doctrine of emancipation. Sudeshwara, 800 AD, excellent work, Nash Karmaya Siddhi, is probably the earliest independent treatise on Shankara philosophy as expressed in the Bhashya. It has been commented upon by Gyanottama Mishra. Vidyaranya also wrote another work of great merit known as Panchadashi, which is very popular and illuminating treatise in Panchadashi, which is a very popular illuminating treatise in the verse on Vedanta. Another important work written in verse on the main teachings of Shankara Bhashya is Samkshepa Sharirika, written by Saragyatma Muni, 900 AD. This has also been commented upon by Ramatirtha Sheharsa, 1190 AD, wrote Khandana Khanda Khadya. श्री हर्षा 1190 एडी का खंडना खंडा खड्या ये कहीं ना कहीं पूछा गया था who probably flourished shortly after Sri Harsha, wrote a commentary on it and also wrote an independent work on Vedanta dialectical known as Tattva Deepika, which has also a commentary on Nyayana Prasadini written by Pratyagrupa. Shankar Mishra and Raghunatha also wrote commentaries on Khandana Khanda Khadya, a work on Vedanta epistemology and the principal topics of Vedanta of great originality and merit known as Vedanta Paribhasha was written by Dharmaraja Dwarendra about 1550 AD. His son Ramakrishna Dhwirin wrote his Shikhamani on it and Amar Dasa his Mani Prabha. The Vedanta Paribhasha, with these two commentaries, forms an excellent exposition of some of fundamental principles of Vedanta. Another work of supreme importance, though probably the last great work on Vedanta, is Advaita Siddhi of Madhusudana Saraswati, who followed Dharmaraja Virendra. There has three commentaries. This has three commentaries known as Gaur Brahmanandi, Vitthale Sapodhyay, and Siddhi Vakya. Sadananda Vyasa wrote also a summary of it known as Advaita Siddhanta Sara. किसका था another work of supreme importance is the Advaita Siddhi of Madhusudan Saraswati. तो मधुसूदन सरस्वती का है गौड़ ब्रह्मानंदिनी एंड विठल सोफयाई एंड सिद्धवाक्य ठीक है द अद्वैत ब्रह्म सिद्धि ऑफ सदानंदा यति though much inferior to Advaita Siddhi, is important as it touches on many points of Vedanta. interest, which are not dealt with other Vedanta works. The Nyaya Makaranda of Anand Bodh, Bhattarakacharya treats of the doctrines of illusion very well, as also some other important points of Vedanta interest. Vedanta Siddhanta Muktavali of Prakashananda discusses many of the subtle points regarding the nature of ajnana and its relations to chit. The doctrine of Dishti, Shashti, Vada, etc., with a great clearness, Siddhanta Lesha by Apyaya Dikshita is very important as a summary of a divergent views of different writers on many points of interest. Vedanta Tattva Deepika and Siddhanta Tattva are also good as well as deep in their general summary of Vedanta system. Bheda Dhikara of Narsim Shrama Muni also is to be regarded as an important work of the Vedanta dialectic. The above is only a list of some of the most important Vedanta works on which the present chapter has been based. Vedanta of Gaudapada. It is useless, I think, to attempt to bring out the meaning of Vedanta thought as contained in the Brahma Sutra without making any reference to the commentary of Shankara or any other commentary. There is reason to believe that Brahma Sutras were first commented upon by some Vaishnava writers who held some form of modified dualism. This point will be dealt in the second volume when I shall deal with the system expounded by Vaishnava commentaries of the Brahma Sutra. ये सेकंड पार्ट, ये लास्ट चैप्टर है इस पार्ट का, तो इसका हम सेकंड पार्ट में ये सारी चीजें हम एक्सप्लोर करेंगे. There have been more than half dozen Vaishnava commenters of the Brahma Sutra who not only differed from Shankara's interpretation but also differed largely amongst themselves in accordance with the different degrees of stress they laid on different aspects of their dualistic creeds. Every one of them claimed that his interpretation was the only one that was faithful to the sutras and to the Upanishads. Should I attempt to give an interpretation myself and claim that to be the right one, it would be only just one additional view. But however, that may be, I am myself inclined to believe that dualistic interpretation of Brahma Sutras were probably more faithful to the sutras than the interpretation of Shankara. तो इन्होंने बस ये बोला गया है जितने भी वैष्णवाइट्स हैं उन्होंने ब्रह्म सूत्र पे बहुत सारे कमेंट्रीज लिखी. Now Vaishnavites they are definitely they are worshippers of Vishnu and विष्णु के कई सारे अवतार भी हैं, तो obviously all the theories and research will be on that only. अगर आप इस context में देखें कि ओके जैसे भगवद गीता है, Bhagavad Gita is on the life of Bhagwan Krishna. Now that is why all these people were commenting on that. That is their own additional point of view. That has nothing to do with what is right or what is wrong, right? The Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which itself was a work of ekanti, singularistic Vaishnavas, यानी कि ये भी लिखा हुआ है श्रीमद् भागवत गीता जो है वो एकांत यानी कि सिंगुलरिस्टिक वैष्णवास mentions the Brahma Sutras as having some purport as its own, giving congent reasons. Brahma Sutra Padascheva Hetu Madhvevi Nishchita Bhagavad Gita. The proofs in support of the view that Bhagavad Gita is a Vaishnava work will be discussed in the in the second volume and of the present work in the section of Bhagavad Gita and its philosophy. The Srimad Bhagavad Gita, which itself was work of ekanti, singularistic Vaishnavas, ekanti Vaishnavas, mentioned Brahma Sutra as having the some purport as its own, giving cogent reasons. Professor Jacobi, in discussing the date of philosophical sutras of the Hindus, has shown that the reference to Buddhism found in the Brahma Sutras are not with regard to Vijnanavada or Vasubandhu, but with regard to Shunyavada. But he regards the composition of Brahma Sutras to be later than Nagarjuna. वो नागार्जुना के बाद की डेट देते हैं टू ऑल द ब्रह्म सूत्रास दैट वर देयर. Hmm. I agree that with the late Dr. S.C. Vidyabhushana in holding that both the Yogacara system and the system of Nagarjuna evolved from the Pragya Paramiti. Right. Nagarjuna's merit consisted in the dialectical form of the arguments in support of Shunyavada. But so far as the essentials of Shunyavada are concerned, I believe that the Tathat philosophy of Ashwagosha, Tathat philosophy is of Ashwagosha, and the philosophy of Pragya Paramita contained no less. There is no reason to suppose that the work of Nagarjuna were better known to the Hindu writers than the Mahayana Sutras. Even in such later times as that of Vachaspati Mishra, we find him quoting a passage of Salishtambha Sutras to give an account of the Buddhist doctrine of Pratitya Samutpada. We could interpret any reference to Shunyavada as pointing to Nagarjuna only if its special phraseology of dialectical method were inferred in any way. On the other hand, the reference of Bhagavad Gita to the Brahma Sutras clearly points out the date prior to that of Nagarjuna, though we may be slow to believe such an early date as has been assigned by Bhagavad Gita by Telang. Yet I suppose that its date could safely be placed so far back as the first half of the first century BC or the last part of the second century BC. The Brahma Sutras could thus be placed slightly earlier than the date of Bhagavad Gita. I do not know of any evidence that would come in conflict with this supposition. The fact that we do not know any Hindu writer who held much monistic view of as Gaudapada or Shankara and who interpret the Brahma Sutras in accordance with those monistic ideas. When combined with the fact that the dualists had been writing commentaries on Brahma Sutra, goes to show that Brahma Sutras were originally regarded as an authoritative work of the dualists. This dualist are those जिसमें ब्रह्म ब्राह्मण अलग होते हैं and monists are those जिसमें they don't accept the testimony of Brahman Brahman. ये हमने पहले पढ़ा हुआ न्याय philosophy में, right? This also explains the fact that the Bhagavad Gita, the canonical work of the Ekanti Vaishnavis, should prefer to it. Ekanti Vaishnavis, क्योंकि the thing is, whenever you are writing a work, यू कांट सारे लोग कहते हैं कि हम काम कर रहे हैं तो हमें बिल्कुल ही सेक्युलर माइंडसेट ये सब माइंडसेट होना चाहिए. सी एवरी वर्क वेरी बेस्ट ऑफ द बेस्ट वर्क्स दैट वर डन दे वर एकांतिस्ट मतलब वो एक पर्टिकुलर एम को कैटर करते हैं. Obviously whenever you are writing a work it will please someone, it might not please someone, right? तो आप जो काम लिख रहे हैं, आप जो बुक्स लिख रहे हैं, उसका ये भी थ्योरी रहता है आज के डेट में भी. एनीथिंग विच इज सेक्युलर तो वो पढ़ने वालों को भी मज़ा नहीं आएगा. इफ़ आई एम रीडिंग अ बुक विच आई प्रिज्यूम्ड, या फिर मैं जैसे मूवी भी देख रहा हूँ विच आई प्रिज्यूम इट वुड बी द राइटेस्ट एक्सट्रीमिस्ट मूवी, और अगर उसमें मैं हल्का सा छौंक भी देख लेता हूँ कि उन्होंने कुछ और एक्सप्रेशन दिया है, आई डोंट लाइक द एंटायर मूवी. सिमिलरली इज फॉर द बुक्स. तो इसमें कुछ गलत नहीं था. I do not know of any Hindu writer previous to Gaudapada who attempted to give us exposition of the monastic doctrine apart from Upanishads, either by writing a commentary as did Shankara or by writing an independent work as did Gaudapada. I was inclined to think, therefore, that as a pure monism of the Upanishads was not worked out in the coherent manner for the formation of monastic system, it was dealt by the people who had sympathies for some form of dualism, which was already developing in the later days of the Upanishads, as evidenced by the dualistic tendencies of such Upanishads as the Shweta Shvatara and the like. The epic Sankhya was also the result of this dualistic development. It seems that Bhadrayana, the writer of the Brahma Sutras, was probably more the theist than the absolutist like his commentator Shankara. Gaudapada seems to be the most important man after the Upanishad sage who revived the monistic tendencies of the Upanishads in a bold and clear form and tried to formulate them in a systematic manner. It seems very significant that no other karikas on the Upanishads were interpreted, except the Mandukya Karika by Gaudapada, who did not himself make any reference to any other writer of the monastic school, not even Bhadrayana. Shankara himself makes the confession that absolutist Advaita creed was recovered from the Vedas by Gaudapada. Thus, at the conclusion of this commentary on Gaudapada's Karika, he says that he adores by falling at the feet of of that great Guru teacher, the adored of his adored, who, on finding all people sinking in the ocean, made dreadful by the crocodiles of rebirth, out of kindness of all people, by churning the great ocean of the Veda, by his great churning rod of wisdom, recovered what lay deep in the heart of the Vedas and is hardly attainable even by the immortal gods. It seems particularly significant that Shankara should credit Gaudapada and not Bhadrayana with recovering the Upanishad creed. Gaudapada was the teacher of Govinda, the teacher of Shankara, but he was probably living when Shankara was a student. For Shankara says that he was directly influenced by his great wisdom and also speaks of the learning, self control, and modesty of other pupils of Gaudapada. There is some dispute about the date of Shankara, but accepting the date proposed by Bhandarkar, Pathak, and Dusan, we may consider it to be 788 AD, and suppose that in order to be able to teach Shankara, Gaudapada must have been living till at least 800 AD. Gaudapada thus flourished after all great Buddhist teachers Ashwagosha, Nagarjuna, Asanga, and Vasubandhu. And I believe that there is sufficient evidence in his Karikas for thinking that he was possibly himself a Buddhist and consider that the teachings of Upanishads tallied with those of Buddha. Thus, at the beginning of the fourth chapter of his Karikas, he says that he adores that great king, Dvipadam Varam, who by knowledge as wide as the sky realized some Buddha that all appearances dharma were like the vacious sky Gagan Pamam. He then goes on to say that he adores him who was dictated Deshita, that the touch of untouch, Asparsha Yoga, probably referring to Nirvana, was the good that produced happiness in all beings, and that he was neither in disagreement with his doctrine nor found any contradiction in it. Avivada aviruddhascha. Some others quarreling with them hold that being jat is of non-existence, abhuttascha. There are others who quarrel with them and say that neither the existence nor non existence are liable to being, and there is no one non coming into being. Advayam Majtim. He agrees with those who hold that there is no coming into being. In fourth chapter 19th verse of his Karika, he again says that Buddhas have shown that there was no coming into being in any way. Swaratha Buddha Rajita Paradipita. पढ़ा है क्या? Oh, it's big. ठीक है. Again, in the fourth volume, 42nd, he says that it was of those realists, Vastuvadi, who since they found things, तो वास्तुवादी को रियलिस्ट भी बोलते हैं, जो एक्चुअली अगर आप वास्तु देखेंगे भी तो वो काफी रियलिस्टिक लगेगा. इन अ सेंस प्लानिंग कैसे होती है, आप जितने भी फोर्सेस हैं उन्हें कैसे प्लेस करते हो, हाउ द अरेंजमेंट ऑफ हाउसेस देयर, various other things. Who, since they found things and could deal with them and were afraid of non being, that the Buddhas had spoken of origination, jati. In fourth volume, 90th verse, he refers to Agrayana, which we know to be a name of Mahayana. Again, in 498 and 99, he says that all appearance are pure and vicious by nature. The Buddhas, the emancipated one Mukta, and the leaders know first. It was not said by Buddha that all appearances, dharma, were knowledge. He then closes the Karikas with an adoration which, in all probability, was referred to the Buddha. Gaudapada Karika, volume 100, volume 4, verse 100. In my translation, I have not followed Shankara, for he has, I think, tried to level best to explain away even the most obvious references to Buddha and Buddhism in Gaudapada's Karika. I have therefore drawn my meaning directly from Gaudapada's Karika seems to indicate. I have followed the same principle in giving the short exposition of Gaudapada's philosophy below. तो गौड़पादा की फिलॉसफी अब ये बता रहे हैं. गौड़पादा वर्क is divided into 4 chapters: Agam, scriptures; Vaitatya, unreality; Advait, unity; and Alanta Shanti, the extinction of the burning coal. The first chapter is more in the way of explaining the Mandukya Upanishad, by virtue of which the entire work is known as Mandukya Karika. The second, third, and fourth chapters are the constructive parts of Gaudapada's work, not particularly connected to the Mandukya Upanishad. In the first chapter of Gaudapada begins with the 3 apparent manifestations of the self as the experiencer of the external world while we are awake. As the experiencer of the external world while we are awake. Vishwa and Vaishvanara Atma, as the experiencer of the external world while we are awake. That is manifestation. कि आपको कैसे देखते हैं, जैसे आप अगर if I am awake and I am right now reciting this, उसको कर रहा हूँ, तो that is विश्वानरा आत्मा या फिर विश्वा. दूसरा, as the experiencer in the dream state, तेजस आत्मा, यानी कि जब हम कुछ एक्सपीरियंस करते हो तो हम सपने में होते हैं, that is तेजस आत्मा. As the experiencer in deep sleep, sushupti, called the pragya, when there is no determinate knowledge but pure consciousness and pure bliss, ananda. जब डीप स्लीप होती है तब सुषुप्ति होती है. प्रज्ञा जब कोई डिटर्मिनेट नॉलेज नहीं होती है, एंड जब प्योर कॉन्शियसनेस एंड प्योर ब्लिस होता है, दैट इज आनंद. राइट. He who knows these 3 as one is never attached to his experiences. Gaudapada then enumerates some theories of creation. Some think that the world has proceeded as a creation from the prana, vital activity. Others consider creation as an expansion, vibhuti, of the cause from which it has proceeded. Others imagine that creation is like dream, swapna, and magic, maya. Others that creation proceed simply by the will of the Lord. Others that it proceeds from time. Others that it is for the enjoyment of Lord, bhogartham, and for the play only kridartham. For such is the nature, swabhava of the Lord, that he creates, but he cannot have any longing, as all his desires are in the state of fulfillment. Gaudapada does not indicate his preference one way or the other, but describes the fourth state of his self as unseen, adishta, unrelationable, avyavharam, ungraspable, agrahyam, indefinable, alakshana, unthinkable, achintyam, unspeakable, avyapadesha. The essence of oneness with the self, ekatma pratyayashara, pratyayasara. As the extinction of the appearance, prapancha pashama, the quiescent santam, the good shivam, the one advaita. Compare in Nagarjuna's first Karika the idea of Prapancha Pashamam Shivam Anirodha Manutpadam Nuchademaswatam Anekaarthamanartha Magamaniragamam Ya Pratitya Samutpadam प्रापोफिचोपासमं शिवं देशायमासा सम्बुद्धस्तं वन्दे वादत्मावरम्. Compare also Nagarjuna's chapter on Nirvana Parika पूर्वोपलम्भोपसम्माः प्रापञ्चोपाशमा शिव न क्वचित् काश्यचित् कश्चिद्धर्मो बुद्धेन देशिता. So far as I know, the Buddhists were the first to use the word prapanchopashman shivam. Acha. Okay, so they would have heard this from the Buddhist philosophy only for the first time. The word appearance, prapancha, would have ceased if it had existed, but all this duality is mere maya, magic or illusion. The one is the ultimate real pramartha taha. In the second chapter, Gaudapada says that what is meant by calling the world a dream is that all existence is unreal. That which neither exists in the beginning nor in the end cannot be said to exist in the present. Being like unreal is it appears as real. The appearance has a beginning and an end, and is therefore false. The dreams things are imagined internally, and in the experience that we have when we are awake, things are imagined as if existing outside, but both of them are but illusory creations of the self. What is perceived in the mind is perceived as existing at the moment of perception only. External objects are supposed to have two moments of existence, namely before they are perceived and when they begin to be perceived. But this is all mere imagination. That which is unmanifested in the mind and that which appears as distinct and manifest outside are all imaginary productions in association with the sense faculties. There is first the imagination of the perceiver or soul, jiva, and then along with it the imaginary creation of diverse inner states and the external world. Just as in darkness the rope is imagined to be a snake, and so the self is also imagined by its own illusion in diverse forms. There is neither any production nor any destruction, na nirodha, na chotpatti. There is no one who is enchained, no one who is striving, no one who wants to be released. Imagination finds itself realized in the existent existence, and also in the sense of unity. All imagination, either as the many of the one Advaya, is false. It is only the oneness Advaita that is good. There is no more nor or things different or nor different. Na nedam, na prathag, na prathak. The sages who have transcended attachment, fear, and anger, and have gone beyond the depths of the Vedas, have perceived it as the imagination-less cessation of all appearance. Nirvikalpa prapanchopashama, the one. In the third chapter, Gaudapada says that the truth is like the void, Akasha, which is falsely conceived as taking part in birth and death, coming and going, and as existing in all bodies. But however it is conceived, it is all the while not different from Akasha. All things that appear as compounded are but dreams, Swapna, and Maya, magic. Duality is a distinction imposed upon one Advaita by Maya. The truth is immortal. It cannot therefore by its own nature suffer change. It has no birth. All birth and death, all this manifold, is but the result of an imposition of Maya upon it. One mind appears as many in the dream, or so also in the waking state one appears as many. But when the mind activity of the Togans, sages, is stopped, arises this fearless state, the extinction of all sorrows, final cessation, thinking everything to be misery, dukkham sarvam anushmatya. One should stop all desires and enjoyments and think that nothing has any birth. He should not see any production at all. He should awaken the mind chitta into its final dissolution, laya, and pacify it when a distraction. He should not move it towards diverse objects when it stops. He should not taste any pleasure, sukham, and by wisdom remains unattached, by strong effort making it motionless and still. When he neither passes into dissolution nor into distraction, where there is no sign, no appearance, that is the perfect Brahman. When there is no object of knowledge to come into being, the unproduced is then called the omniscient Sarvagya. The fourth chapter, called the Alat Shanti, Gaudapada further describes this final state. All the dharmas appearances are without death or decay. Gaudapada then follows a dialectical form of argument which reminds us of Nagarjuna. Gaudapada continues thus: those who regard Karan, cause, as the Karya, effect of potential form, cannot consider the cause as truly unproduced, Aja, for it suffers production. How can it be called eternal and yet changing? If it is said that things come into being from that which has no production, there is no example with which such a case may be illustrated. Nor can we consider that anything is born from that which has itself suffered production. How again can one come to a right conclusion about the regressus ad infinitum of cause and effect, hetu and phala, without reference to the effect, which is no cause, and without reference to cause, there is no effect. Nothing is born either by itself or through others. Call it neither being nor non being, and being non beings, nothing suffers any birth. Neither the cause nor the effect is produced out of its own nature. Swabhavata. And thus, that which has no beginning anywhere cannot be said to have a production. All experience, pragyapti, is dependent on reasons, for otherwise both would vanish, and there would be none of the afflictions, some klesha, that we suffer. When we look at all things in a connected manner, they seem to be dependent, but when we look at them from the point of view of the reality of truth, the reasons cease to be reasons. The mind chitta does not come in touch with objects and thereby manifest them. For since things do not exist, they are not different from their manifestations in knowledge. It is not in any particular case that the mind produces the manifestation of objects, while they do not exist, so that it could be said to be an error. For in present, past, and future, the mind never comes in touch with objects, which only appear by reason of their diverse manifestations. Therefore, neither the mind nor the objects seen by it are ever produced. Those who perceive them to suffer production are really transversing the real reason of vacuity, K. For all production is but false imposition of the vacuity. Since the unborn is perceived as being born, the essence then is the absence of production. ये सारे जो कंसेप्ट है ये आप न्याय शास्त्र में भी पढ़ चुके हैं, जिसमें व्हाट वी आर परसीविंग एज ट्रू इज ओनली द ओपन स्पेस. उसमें कोई चीज आ जाती है, उसमें कोई एलिमेंट आ जाता है, तो हम उसको परसीव करते हैं, ओके दिस इज एन ऑब्जेक्ट, बट अगेन दिस इज नॉट रियल, right? Because we are perceiving with something that is unreal, again that is ever changing. For it being of the nature of absence of production, it could never change its nature. Everything has a beginning and an end and is therefore false. The existence of all things is like a magical and illusory elephant, Maya Hasti, and exists only as far as it merely appears or it and or is related to experience. There is thus the appearance of production, movement, and things. But the only knowledge, Vijnana, is the unborn, unmoved, and unthingness, avastutva, and cessation, santam. As the movement of the burning charcoal is perceived as straight or curved, so it is movement, spandita, of consciousness, thus, that appears as the perceiving and the perceived. All the attributes, the example straight or curved, are imposed upon the charcoal fire. Though in reality it does not possess them, so also all the appearances are imposed upon consciousness, though in reality they do not possess them. We could never indicate any kind of causal relation between the consciousness and its appearance, which are therefore to be demonstrated as unthinkable, achintya. A thing, dravya, is the cause of a thing, dravya, and that which is not a thing may be the cause of that which is not a thing. But all appearances are neither things nor those which are not things. So neither are appearances produced from the mind chitta, nor in the mind produced by appearances. So long as one thinks of cause and effect, he has to suffer the cycle of existence samsara. But when the notion ceases, there is no samsara. All things are regarded as being produced from relative point of view, only some sampriti. There is therefore nothing permanent, shashvat. Again, no existent things are produced. Hence, there cannot be any destruction, uchcheda. Appearances dharma are produced only apparently, not in reality. Their coming into being is like Maya, and that Maya again does not exist. All appearances are like shoots of magic coming out of seeds of magic, and are not therefore neither eternal nor destructible. As in dreams or in magic, men are born and die. So are all appearances. That which appear as existing from an imaginary relative point of view, kalpita samriti, is not so in reality, Paramartha, for the existence depending on others, as shown in all relative appearances, is after all not a real existence. That things exist, do not exist, do exist and not exist, and neither exist nor not exist. That they are moving or steady, or none of those are but thoughts with which fools are deluded. It is so obvious that these doctrines are borrowed from Madhyamika doctrines as found in Nagarjuna's Karikas and the Vijnanavada doctrines as found in Lankavatara, that it is needless to attempt to prove it. Gaudapada assimilated all the Buddhist Sunyavada and Vijnanavada teachings and thought that these held good of the ultimate truth preached by the Upanishads. It is immaterial whether he was a Hindu or a Buddhist, so long as we are sure that he had the highest respect for the Buddha and for the teachings which is believed to be his. Gaudapada took the smallest Upanishads to comment upon, probably because he wishes to give his opinion unrestricted by the textual limitations of the bigger ones. His main emphasis is on the truth, and he realized to be perfect. He only incidentally suggested that the great Buddhist trust of indefinable and unspeakable vijnana or vacuity would hold good of the highest Atman of the Upanishads, and thus laid the foundation of the revival of the Upanishad studies on Buddhist lines. For how far the Upanishads guaranteed the detail of truth of Gaudapada's view, it was left for his disciple, the great Shankara, to examine and explain. अब हम शंकरा की स्टोरी पढ़ेंगे जो उनके डिसाइपल थे, which we'll cover tomorrow. It was a brief introduction. I hope you like it. If you have any doubts, you can comment down in the comment section below. I'll see you guys in the next video. Jai Shri Ram.